Hello friends, and welcome back to another episode of Spilling Studio. My name is Sam, and this week we have 7 new ARE practice questions designed to help you pass your next exam. There's 1 question per exam topic and a bonus question at the end, so stick around. Starting us off is practice management. What type of business structure is most appropriate for a small commercial firm with an owner who is looking to grow to a few staff members in the near future? Sole proprietorship, general partnership, limited liability company, corporation. Feel free to pause here to answer. And the answer is limited liability company. Let's go over our wrong answers first. Sole proprietorships are pretty easy to set up. The owner has full control over management, and the owner may receive tax advantages since the business expenses and losses can be deducted from the gross income of the business. However, this option wouldn't be the best choice since the owner would personally be liable for the company's debts and losses. So if a client sues the firm, then the owner's personal income and property, like their house, can be seized to pay any judgments. Another negative is that raising funds and establishing credit depends on the owner's personal credit score. It also may be difficult to sell the firm in the future since the business's success or failure primarily depends on the owner's reputation. In a general partnership, the general partners invest in the business, management, and are financially responsible for the firm. Similar to a sole proprietorship, the general partners are personally liable for the company's debts and losses. And if the partners have a disagreement and one of them wants to leave, then the partnership is usually dissolved. This type of business organization also isn't used for a one-person firm, so this would not be the best choice. And a corporation isn't the best choice either. A corporation takes a lot of effort to set up and maintain. There are 3 different levels of participants: stakeholders who own a portion, directors who have fiduciary responsibilities to act in the best interests of stakeholders, and officers who carry out day-to-day management. Taxes are levied on both the corporation and the individual within it, meaning corporate income is essentially taxed twice. As you can imagine, with all of these participants, difficulty to set up, and the double tax, this option isn't the best for a sole owner or an owner with a few staff members. So what's the right answer? Limited liability company. An LLC has some great advantages. Each member is only liable for their investment, so there's no personal liability, so no one can take your house away. Also, the government does not see an LLC as a separate entity, so the business is not taxed, only the owner is. So we're only taxed once, unlike a corporation that has double tax, that taxes the business and then the owner personally. This business organization can be set up for a sole business owner or for a small firm. So an LLC was the best option for that scenario. Now on to project management. An architect is designing a 40-story office building in the heart of downtown. What will influence the height of the building the most? A direct expansion system? An all-water two-pipe system? An underfloor ventilation system? Or interstitial spaces? Pause here to answer. And the answer is interstitial spaces. An interstitial space is often used in tall buildings, and it is when there is an entire floor dedicated to holding mechanical equipment, electrical systems, water pumps, and elevator machinery. They are strategically placed in intervals throughout the building, typically every 10 to 15 floors, and they are designed to serve multiple floors. These floors will be multiple feet high since they need to allow someone to enter to maintain the equipment, and therefore will have the greatest impact on the height of the building. Direct expansion systems, or a DX system, is a wall unit that pulls in air from the exterior, so vertical height is not needed. And our other 2 options, an all-water system and underfloor ventilation systems, will only take up a few feet at most. Now on to programming and analysis. An architect is assisting a client with selecting a property for a new gymnasium. Which of the following would be the most suitable for development? Marshland, woodland, land and flood zone, aquifer recharge land. Pause here to answer. And the correct answer is woodland. Of the options provided, woodlands are the most tolerant to human use, especially when developed in a way that retains inherent characteristics of the land. Woodlands are important ecosystems that support biodiversity. However, sustainable design practices such as careful site planning and preservation of green spaces can minimize environmental impact. Marshlands, out of all of our options, would be the worst land to develop. They provide essential ecosystem services such as natural flood control, water filtration, and wildlife habitat. These are very fragile ecosystems that would be disrupted if developed. Doing so could lead to a loss of biodiversity and the risk of flooding in the surrounding areas. Developing land in a flood zone carries significant risk for both the environment and human safety. Building in a flood-prone area increases the risk of property damage, endangers lives, and strains emergency response resources. Construction in these areas will also disrupt natural floodplain functions, increasing flooding downstream and degrading water quality. And lastly, aquifer recharge areas play a crucial role in replenishing groundwater resources, which are essential for drinking water supplies, agriculture, and overall ecosystem health. Developing in these areas will impair groundwater recharge, which will lead to decreased water availability and increased vulnerability to drought. Protecting aquifer recharge areas is vital for ensuring long-term water security and environmental sustainability. Next up is project planning. An architect is working with the fire protection engineer to design a fire protection system of a small apartment building. It is important to the owner that the system is able to be activated by building occupants. Which of the following components should the designers consider? Select 3 that apply. Wet standpipes, fire extinguishers, fusible links, dry standpipes, annunciators, two-way communication devices. Pause here to answer. And the correct answer is fire extinguishers, wet standpipes, and two-way communication devices. I remember when I was super young, my parents showing me where the fire extinguisher was in a storage closet near our kitchen and telling me how to use it. Luckily, I never had to, and I'm pretty sure my little 4-year-old self probably wouldn't have been able to pull the trigger, but maybe I could at least brought it to them. I don't know. Anyway, all that to say, fire extinguishers can be operated by building occupants. Maybe not 4-year-olds, but the majority of building occupants. Fire extinguishers should be located a maximum of 75 feet from every building occupant or as required by code, but it's typically 75 feet. Wet standpipes are those large pipes you typically see in stairwells. They run vertically through the building and can be connected to a hose. There's at least one hose on every floor, and it's usually right next to the standpipe. Occupants can connect the hose to the standpipe and release water as necessary. And finally, the purpose of a two-way communication device is so that building occupants can use them if they're having trouble evacuating a building. They can use these devices to call for help. Dry standpipes have to be connected to a pumper trunk in order for them to be filled with water, so they're used by firefighters. Annunciators are also used by firefighters to give instructions to building occupants. They are not two-way devices. And finally, a fusible link is a sensor that senses the rise in ambient temperature, which indicates the presence of fire. So these cannot be activated by building occupants either. A quick pause here to remind you that I post new questions every week, so please hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on a video. It also really helps me out, so thank you. Moving on to project development. An architect has specified an aluminum door frame for installation in a CMU wall. Which material is the least desirable choice for flashing at the head of the door? Aluminum, copper, titanium, steel, or lead? Pause here to answer. And the answer is titanium. Did you freak out on this one? How am I supposed to know this? Well, it all comes down to the galvanic action table. Titanium would be the least desirable choice to use anywhere near aluminum because of our options. It's the furthest from aluminum on the galvanic action table. The more current will flow between metals that are dissimilar, which will speed corrosion. This process is called electrolysis. The best choice would have been to use aluminum for everything, flashing, fasteners, and other accessories. But it must be protected from the mortar and concrete because aluminum reacts with alkaline materials. You could also use a non-reactive material like a plastic, but they can degrade easily, so it's important to do some research before specifying them. You could also use rubber or neoprene to separate dissimilar materials, but this is more of a last resort because you have to make sure that it gets applied correctly during construction. Next is construction evaluation. A contractor has a question about the building sewer connection and needs to reach out to the plumbing engineer. How should communications between the contractor and the plumbing engineer be conducted during construction? Through the owner? Through the architect? Directly to the consultant? Through the permitting department? Pause here to answer. The answer is through the architect. A rule of thumb to remember: anyone with sub in their name cannot be spoken to directly. Alright, so contractors cannot talk to subconsultants, and architects cannot talk to subcontractors. This is stated in AIA document A201 under Article 4, Architect, Section 4.2.4, Communications. And it says, communications by and with the architect's consultants shall be through the architect. And then the very next sentence tells us communications by and with subcontractors and suppliers shall be through the contractor. So if you didn't hire them, don't talk to them. Remember that, and you should get most communication questions right on your exam. And finally, our bonus question is, according to AIA document B101, which of the following are considered an additional service? Select 3 that apply. Programming, construction administration, structural design, historic preservation, or commissioning. Pause here to answer. And the correct answer is programming, historic preservation, and commissioning. If you tuned in last week, I hope you got this one right. Last week we looked at this nice little table in B101 that lists all of these supplemental services that can be provided. And on this list we can see programming, historic preservation, and commissioning are all listed as additional services. Additional services can be included in the contract as it's formed or after the contract has been signed. These services can be initiated by the owner or the architect. The owner may want to add on a post-occupancy survey after the building has been constructed because they'll be developing a similar building on another property and wants to improve the next build. Or the architect may decide it's in the best interest of the owner to create multiple bid packages so they can phase the project as funding becomes available. If the architect is proposing this, they must explain the facts and circumstances giving rise to the need and may only proceed with written authorization by the owner. And our 2 incorrect answers, structural design if required and construction administration, are considered part of the architect's basic services, not an additional service. That wraps up our questions for this week. Remember to check out the description for links to some of the AIA contracts covered in this video. I've also linked some of my favorite study books, so go check those out. Let me know in the comments what subject areas you're struggling with, and I'll do my best to cover it in the next video. Thank you all for joining, please subscribe, and good luck on your next exam. You got this.